Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our third installment of Great Minds. So I'm really excited to be here with Crystal and with Suda. And hopefully this new episode will bring some cheer and happiness to your 2020. So today is my turn to be interviewed. So I feel like I'm in the principal's office. I almost like I'm just gonna be sitting here and be asked a whole bunch of questions. So I'm just kidding. So all right, so I'm gonna like hand it back to my co-hosts here, Crystal and Suda, and they're gonna kind of introduce themselves a little bit first, and we are going to start the interview process of MOA.
Awesome. Well, I think you guys have met me before. I am Crystal Carrington. I'm a psychiatrist, psychotherapist, and psychopharmacologist, and very happy to be joining my two buddies for this interview, and especially having JR in the hot seat finally. So I'm excited.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Sudha Wadhwani. I am a clinical psychologist. I'm also the coordinator of equity, inclusion, and community initiatives at Montclair State University at the Counseling Center. Welcome. I am excited, JR, to have you in the hot seat. Now, to start with, did I hear you slip and say it was 2020? Did you say that?
Did I say 20? Well, 2022.
Oh my God,
I think I did.
And I think that's very fitting as a place to start because it kind of does feel like 2020. We were just saying, even though it's 2022, Happy New Year, you both.
Happy New Year.
And I'm so looking forward to continuing the series with you both and to hearing a little bit more and getting to know you a little bit more, JR. So can you please start by just sharing with us how you identify professionally as well as personally?
Sure, yeah. So I consider myself as a professional speaker and trainer. And this is what I love to do. And as you all know, I specialize in mental health and diversity and inclusion training type of stuff. So this is, and yeah, so, and professionally, I also kind of identify as myself, not really as a leader, because I don't tell the truth. I don't like to lead. I think the older I'm getting, I'm becoming lazier. So what I like to do is inspire. I'm trying to inspire, especially like a lot of demographic people that I work with are college students and young professionals. And I don't really believe in changing people. You know, if people want to change, it needs to come from themselves. So I don't like to tell them what to do. I don't like to give advice. Instead, I try my best to inspire them to transform and change how they want to do, like whatever they want to be. So it's kind of where I am. And personally, I identify myself as Asian American. Specifically, I'm Taiwanese. So I was born in Taiwan. I grew up in Los Angeles. So I'm totally fine with being called Asian American, even though Suda and I, we know that Asian American is such a huge, large term. And I don't mind that. You know, if people that knows me want to call me Taiwanese American, that's awesome too. If people want to call me I'm Taiwanese, that's cool too. Which is straight out American, that's awesome too. So those three terms, all good with it. And the reason I am happy with Asian Americans is because I still believe that. Well, in fact, I'm doing more research on this, and hopefully me and my film partner, we can do something about this. Is that one of the actors, I forgot his name, he said that Asian Americans, we are quote unquote the third experience. Of course, that's based on another author borderline a little bit racist too. The idea behind it is that the first experience, of course, is the white people. The second experience, the Black folks. And oftentimes they forgot the Native Americans. Anyway, so that's why this whole idea is a little bit questionable. At the same time, this actor say something like Asian Americans, we are becoming the third experience. Well, I think it should be the fourth, whatever. The idea behind it is that, because I think Asian American, in a way, we are very kind of unique-ish. The challenges, the opportunity that we face. So because we are not really Asians, I'm not really Taiwanese, but I'm Taiwanese. I'm not really American. I just said I'm an American. And so the experience that we have is kind of like literally in this gap, in this weird void that I think a lot of us, I see you like nodding your head to that like a lot of us are still trying to figure out what does this mean. And I think that we need to amplify this. We need to embrace this, that like we are unique in a sense that, and it's okay. And I think we have this opportunity to redefine who we are. So that's why I'm totally okay with Asian American.
I love that you called it a gap. I often do a workshop called Bridging the Gap or Juggling Two Worlds. And it sounds like that's very much a part of your experience as well.
Yes. And instead of trying to be either or, how about just be us? Just be this. So, yeah.
And would you say those different identities or check boxes or whatever you want to call it have been fluid through your life, have shifted through your life?
Yes, definitely. Like many Asian Taiwanese immigrants, when I was young, I was embarrassed, ashamed of my Asian heritage due to the pressure to assimilate, to be American, i.e. to become white. So I think I held on to this belief that, this belief that I need to be American, as American as possible. And by doing this, I have to turn my back away from my heritage, my Asian heritage and identities. And I think just through different mentorship, my therapy, and I realized that no, like this, I think that the pressure, the expectation of me wanted to be Americanized, to be white, is one of the root causes of my depression. So once I realized that, oh my God, this is not healthy for me. First of all, I will never ever be white. It's just straight up. I will always, in the face in this country, be seen as Asian American, the best, not American, Asian American. And it's time for me, instead of looking outward, it's time for me to looking inward. So that's when I realized that, okay, I need to look inward and embrace my identities. And I also realized that I've been here so long that I'm not really Taiwanese. And, I'm not, a lot of cultural belief and practices that I don't like. Tell the truth, I don't like. I don't fit in anymore. So that's why I've been working on just really be myself. I'm 5'7". Do I wish that I'm 5'9" with 6'1"? Do I wish that I look like Brad Pitt? Fuck yeah. But the chance of being that, zero. And it's okay. So I think through therapy, through a lot of self-help, a lot of self-care, I slowly just embrace who I am. It's okay, I'm 5'7". It's okay, I look Asian. It's okay, I have an accent. So
JR, you said fitting in. Once someone truly understands themselves and loves and accepts themselves, fitting in doesn't matter anymore.
yeah.
So, that's how I sort of look at things. And, when Soda had her interview and listening to you now, it pains me that these are some of the experiences internally that you had, feeling like not just assimilating to the culture, but trying to be as close to the dominant demographic as possible. And it boggles my mind because I had such a different experience.
Yeah.
Like, I was always around a diverse group of peers, and we were always very proud of our cultural heritage because we shared the experience of being first generation kids and the conflicts with our parents, but we still really loved our cultures, but we are American kids with that distance. So it's just so interesting to think about the ways in which we can identify ourselves, but it's all aspects of being human. But this is an excellent segue because you're talking to a psychiatrist and a psychologist. We always got to start at the beginning.
I have like so many questions in my head. It's like
Bring it on.
Let's start with childhood. How did your childhood shape and still shapes your experience?
Yeah, so I think it's huge. It's huge. Just using what's that book? The Body Keeps Scores. And I keep forgetting the author. He's this amazing psychologist too. I keep forgetting his name. And so the idea being like the book, and also based on experience that like my childhood is still shaping me, has huge influence in my mentality, in my emotions, my mental health, my physical health. And it all started when I was very, very young. So a lot of Asian parents, especially East Asian parents, they want their kids to become doctors, engineers, lawyers, high earning positions. And I was part of that trend in the 80s, late 70s, 80s, and early 90s, that sending kids to United States to get education. And when I say sending their kids, meaning that one of the parents might come with the kid, well, they literally would just send the kid to stay at a boarding school or stay with a relative. So I was part of that trend. And my mom, out of all the careers that I could have, she could have chosen, she wanted me to be a Buddhist monk. So she sent me from Taiwan when I was 9 years old to United States, to this Buddhist monastery up at North California to become a Buddhist monk. So in a way, I grew up in a Buddhist in a Buddhist monastery from 9 years old to 19 years old. So pretty much my whole teenage years. And I was officially a Buddhist monk from age 12 until 19.
Wow.
So,
we are learning more and more about you, JR.
Yes. And then, in this country, when people hear Buddhism, they think of Dalai Lama, they think of kumbaya, happiness, blah, all that. Which is true. I think a lot of Buddhist teaching are really positive, because especially a lot of Mahayana Buddhism teaches a lot about compassion, kindness, charity work, helping, all the good stuff. That being said, human are still human. All habits die hard. All cultural practices still die hard. So the Buddhist monastery that I grew up in, they preach compassion, kindness, forgiveness, blah, blah, blah. In reality, it's totally opposite. Just think of, all those nasty reports coming out from the nunnery, like Catholic school, boarding school, raising the kids. My experience is pretty similar like that. Really? Yes. So you think of those monks and nuns are all like peace. They are some of those Buddhist monks and nuns. They're pretty nasty. They are pretty mean and nasty. So I know there's like for a lot of American, it might be very shocking to hear and learn this. And I'm sure I'm not bashing Buddhism. In fact, I love Buddhist teachings. I love a lot of Buddhist heritage. I am just bringing up what has happened in human natures. All habits die hard. So due to my experience in the monastery, and I'm just giving you some very specific practical examples. Growing up in a Buddhist monastery, we had to wake up every day at 4 a.m., go to sleep at 10:30 p.m. We meditate, we work, we pray, we bow, we chant, whatever. And on top of that, we were only allowed to eat one meal a day. One meal a day. Yeah. And monks and nuns, males and females, are segregated, well, separated.
Mhm.
So for us, absolutely no music, no TVs, no movies, nothing, no social interactions. So just let that sink in a little bit. As a teenager, one meal a day, went through rigid training, meditation, praying,
And this was ages 12
to 19.
to 19, very
Yeah,
all of your adolescent years.
exactly.
And even just practically, I mean, did your parents visit? I mean, did you see them? Did you ever have like summer break or like so
No
you could
summer
leave
break.
for like 2
Yeah.
weeks? Like,
Once you're in, you're in. And the whole Buddhist monastery mentality, what the teaching is that once you're in, they taught you, you were told to cut off all family ties. So my mom, the last time I saw my mom was when I was 17. She did visit a monastery. So yeah. So no family ties, no, we cannot have any worldly possessions, so no material possessions. One of the precepts that we had to uphold is that physically we cannot even touch money,
Mhm.
like cash.
And where were you up until age 12 before this transition? If you could tell us a little bit about your
Yes.
immigration process and your childhood till that.
Yeah, so when I was 9 years old, I was sent to the monastery. So the monastery is a huge compound, a complex. It has a private school for boys and girls. So local community, well, local people would send their kids to these boys and girls schools. I'm
And this
talking
was
about like
where?
house, huh?
And this was where?
Ukiah, Talmadge in Mendocino County in Northern California. So local population outside the monasteries, sometimes they would send their kids to these private schools, again, boys' schools and girls' schools separately. So when I went to the monastery at 9 years old, I went to boys' school first because I was deemed too young to become a monk. So from 9 to 12, I was part of this boys' school with other, students, boys students from Asia, from Canada, were local students. Some of them are Asian American, some of them were white. And I remember specifically there's one black student and one Hispanic student locally. So, so it was interesting. And so, I lived in the dorm.
So you
Yeah.
were one of the on-campus students, while
Yes.
there were also commuters kind of connecting
Yes,
to our college.
exactly. I think there
nationally.
were like 20, 30 of us. I don't quite remember these boarding students.
See. And your
Yeah,
family was where? Your
in
parents?
Taiwan. The whole time was in Taiwan.
so even as you were being, raised in the monastery, you interfaced with like average other students, average teens.
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
Wow. I have
So
so
And
many
your
just
questions.
imagine,
connection,
Wow.
your
yeah,
connection to them was through school because you didn't leave that community.
no. So just imagine, so yeah, so it's a huge complex compound. Monks and nuns live there, lay people live there, and there's boy and girl schools, and there's a little dormitory for boys' school, and a little dormitory for girls' school. And then so I had teachers, even at boys' school, we learned just regular California required academic stuff, but we had teachers that were monks, were nuns, and of course lay people as teachers. And so even at that school, talking about bullying, talking about they have weird rules, like it's not a school I would ever send a kid to, because I think it's borderline unhealthy, abusive, emotional abusive. So for example, I don't know about right now. This is 1990. I'm talking about 1990. So breakfast time is at 6 a.m. So for the students and also for the lay people at the monastery. So if we miss breakfast, so okay, then break it down to this. So there's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And for the boys' school kids, at 9 p.m., we will have snack time. So since a lot of students, including myself, did not wake up for 6 a.m. for breakfast, we missed breakfast. So in order to encourage us to go to breakfast, they punish us by doing this. They said that if we miss breakfast, we weren't allowed to eat snacks at 9 p.m. So this is so Asian mentality that like the way that we're going to push you to help you is to punish you or to guilt trip you. Yeah. And
it's that little negative reinforcement.
Yeah.
Yes, negative reinforcement. Exactly. And the whole school, when I was there, the whole time was this whole negative reinforcement. There's a lot, of course, I was bullied by other older kids, literally like bully. I was, yeah, you name it. Of course, and during winter time and summer times, a lot of local kids with dormitory kids, they were able to fly, go back home, whatever. I couldn't, due to immigration, due to my family financial situation. So the whole time I was stuck. I was literally stuck. Have no way to.
Do you remember like when you were 9, around the time that your mom made this decision, and recognizing this is a long time ago, do you have any recollection of what you thought, what you felt, sort of?
Crystal, you and I are exactly at the same place, because my question was similar. I was going to I'm picturing you, at the age of 9, coming here to stay in this place, and what a loss, what a transition. What did you make of that experience? And I'm kind of feeling for you as a 9-year-old boy. That's like what, 4th grade, 3rd grade,
yeah,
so even pre-middle school.
Yeah.
Like you're still playing with action figures at that age.
Yes.
I mean,
Legos. And to leave your family and not be able to see them. I just want to hug that 9-year-old.
Yeah, thank you. So there are two things that I want to share. So first of all, I have to go back to my mom. My mom, she was very religious throughout her life. And I recall, and even my sister, so I have one older sister. When my mom had me, I think it was an accident birth. Like, she conceived me as an accident. And I remember throughout my first 5 years of childhood, well, even before I was born, my mom was a very social person. She loves party. And I'm talking about in the 80s and 70s in Taiwan, still very conservative. But I heard stories. I still remember my mom would literally take me to a club, put me on the side, and she would go dance with her friends, like she would. Yeah, and it was kind of acceptable in the 70s. And I remember my mom, would go party. And something changed when I was 5 or 6 years old. Something changed. My mom went from this, again, this is my recollection. My sister and my brother might have totally whole different views, which is totally cool because, again, I was so young. So my recollection, based on my memory, the impact, the trauma, whatever, is that my mom, when I was 5 or 6 years old, she went from 180, went from the social fun, the party life, even my dad. A couple of years ago, I went back to Taiwan and saw my dad first time in 20 years. My dad confirmed that, yeah, my mom was locally in Taiwan, in this little city that I was born in. If people wanted to have fun, want to have a party, want to have fundraising event, my mom had to be there. They will have to invite my mom. If my mom didn't show up, the party wouldn't stop. And my mom was just that charming. My mom was beautiful and charming, and something happened. I still don't know what happened. My mom went with one flip. She became super conservative, religious. She started bringing me to all these religious temples, like Taoism temple, Confucianism, like whatever, Buddhist temples. And then, so at 7 years old, there was this Buddhist monk from the United States. He was a Chinese monk, moved to the United States, built this whole network of Buddhist monasteries in California. My mom met him, and the Buddhist monk blessed me. So long story short, I was 7 years old. I still can remember everything. It was around noon. My mom came to pick me up from the school, drove me to the monastery. By the time we got there, we were already a little bit late because people were lining up from the Buddha hall to the front gates. The quote unquote, the Grand Master was walking toward his car to leave. So we got there, we stood at the last of the line, and the Grand Master was, and as a part of the Asian religious tradition, I don't know, I assume it's a little bit similar in Hinduism, is that the monk would come by and tap on people's head. Like people would kneel down, would stand there, and it's kind of a way to get blessing, you know. So we'll stand at the very last, and the monk, there probably were 20 or 30 people in front of us, and this Grand Master, this monk, finally came in front of me, tapped my mom's head, give her blessing, and when he came to me, the monk raised his cane and hit me on the forehead and just leave. So I know in this country, Suda is like nodding her head, but like Crystal is kind of like, what the hell? In the United States, child abuse, fucked up shit. In Asian cultures, especially in East, I don't know, like in East Asian culture, in Buddhist culture, that is, oh my God, the biggest blessing that a person could receive. Because again, this, it had to do with thousands, hundreds of years of Buddhist practices and whatever. So for me, it's a sign that the Grand Master hit me. It's a super blessing. It's a super blessing. Wash away my karma. In a way, I might be even seen as a chosen one, the lucky one. And the following year, the Grand Master came back to Taiwan, to different city, and my mom took me to see him. Something when the Grand Master saw me, he hit me in the head again. And that was the sign that I was a chosen one. And my mom was pretty much sat down like, okay. And I so vaguely remember my mom asked me if I wanted to become a Buddhist monk or not.
So it wasn't in a punitive way that you were being hit?
No, it was just more like hit, and just once, that's it. Like,
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was having flashbacks to actually kindergarten and first grade in Catholic school, and getting.
I got more than my fair share of some rulers.
Yeah, I would get hit by a ruler. I remember one time during a test, I dropped a pencil and went to pick it up without raising my hand and asking permission, and then got hit with, I think sometimes in the head, sometimes in the hands.
That I did receive in a monastery. So from the Grand Master was more like, I feel that it hurt, but it wasn't painful, and it was seen as
feel these blessings.
Exactly. Like supercharged blessing.
And, oh my God.
And so you were chosen.
That's how my mom or others perceived. And I think also another reason is that my sister is 6 years older than me. My brother is 9 years older than me. And back then, they didn't do well in schools. In fact, I think my oldest brother dropped out from school, and we're talking about in the 80s, you know, like, and they just weren't book smart. I think they were street smart. And my mom, and they got into a lot of trouble. I think maybe one of them even joined a gang temporarily and stuff like that. Like, so my mom was very disappointed with them, and I think my mom put all her hopes onto me. And due to also my family's financial situation, that she thinks that the best way she can provide me is to send me to the United States to become a Buddhist monk in this monastery. I think and then probably the disappointment that she saw from my brother and my sister, and from the situation in that part of Taiwan, she just think that maybe it's not safe. I might grow up like them, become, So, and I vaguely remember my mom, they asked me a couple of times, do I want to be a Buddhist monk? And I say yes. And the reason I say yes is because, again, I was being pampered by my mom. And since then, we've been going to the monastery almost every week. I was pampered by her.
You saw Buddhist monks, you knew Buddhist monks.
Yeah.
Kind of like another 7-year-old might want to be a fireman or a policeman.
Exactly. Oh, I didn't know. I did not know what being a Buddhist monk would be like. I did it. I say, huh? Yeah.
Why would you?
Exactly. I did it to please my mom. And I was pampered by the nuns at the monastery, other people saying that like, I'm so blessed, from all that, I'm the chosen one, blah, blah, blah. And I think, thinking back, I say yes. I was afraid to say no because I didn't want to disappoint my mom.
Do you think in hindsight now, in your awareness of mental health and the work that you do in this field, looking back at that time, that your mom may have been depressed or had PTSD or something going on that you alluded to that perhaps made you even more want to please her or to take care of her?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah,
looking back from what I know, definitely my mom was going through some shit.
Yeah.
People don't flip that 180. First of all, from what we know, went from like one into one, something must happen.
Something happened at that time.
Yeah, and then definitely she was going through some stuff, and I just don't know. And I don't know. Maybe it could be something from depression, or maybe, I don't know, but definitely something.
But really speaks to when we have these kind of gaps in our knowledge and our memory as we, are figuring out our own identities, that must be hard to kind of have these just periods of not knowing.
Yes.
That were part of really shaping your life experience.
Yes.
Were you expected to either stay at the monastery and live your life there, or go forth, spread the word, do good works? Sort of what was the expectation? And then how did you, I don't want to use the term break free, but how did you eventually sort of transition from that life?
Yes. So at 12 years old, the Grand Master decided to start a young monk program. So I became a monk. Again, it came directly from the Grand Master. So there was a pack, a group of us, started with 10 or 11 of us, young monks. And then we were shipped to Long Beach. So the monastery that I spent the most time in 5 years is called Long Beach Monastery. You can Google it. It's literally right by the ocean, right? My view for 2 years is Queen Mary, Catalina Island, Queen Mary. Anyways, beautiful view. Monastery, front lawn, a road, boulevard, more grass, sand, and beach, and the ocean. That was
so
beautiful.
Yeah, often when working with people, we ask about their immigration story, right? Their history, and what an immigration story that is. What a unique one. I can't say in 20 2+ years of doing this work that Annie has been so unique, and
Yeah, thank you.
thinking
Yeah.
about, how that has, shaped you,
Mhm.
and shaped
Yeah.
your identity, and how it's kind of impacted you moving towards this work. I'm sure there's many levels and many
Yes.
other experiences that have added to that
Yes.
in the process.
And yes, thank you. And so in that Long Beach Monastery, we got special education. We got actually those were the better years from 12 to 17. Those were the better years because this monk, he's kind of like equivalent of our headmaster. He was more how do you say, he was more open-minded. So yes, we had to go through the monastery stuff, bowing, meditation, rigid. At the same time, he was able to take us to go on hikes, national park. Because once you enter the monastery, rule number one, we cannot leave the compound unless we're given permission.
Wow.
The walls. So mature. And what this headmaster, he let us, again, this headmaster, he's very charismatic too. He's amazing orator, amazing teacher. So he opened up the monastery to a lot of local people.
Mhm.
And that's the first time I exposed to that many white people. A lot of local white people would come and take his Buddhist classes. And
But
a lot,
excuse me, your acculturation experience though was like filtered by the monastery.
exactly, yes. So it was interesting that, again, the headmaster, he speaks English, Vietnamese, French, and Mandarin. He himself is Vietnamese descendant. So he would have classes in a monastery, Long Beach Monastery. So I would see some classes, he would just speak English, which is predominantly white folks. And he would have Buddhist teaching classes in Vietnamese and just predominantly Vietnamese. And he would give Chinese lecture too, and just predominantly Chinese or Taiwanese. And I think that was my first time exposure to diversity, and through his teaching, a lot of local people started wanting to support us, the young monks. So I remember one of them has sailboat. So he would take us young monks on sailboats to Carrington Island, So at least the head monk, he would allow us to explore different facet of life instead of just being locked down in the monastery. So, and since we were chosen again back by the Grand Master, kind of back to Crystal, what she was saying, is that we were seen and groomed to become the next Buddhist masters that can spread the Dharma, spread the teaching of Buddhism. We were supposed to be the next leader, or you name it. So what happened was, when I was 17 years old, due to internal politics and internal scandal, you name it, whatever, the Grand Master passed away second year, like when I was 14 years old. So the board controls the whole organization. And I think there was some internal jealousy conflicts between them and the headmaster, because it's like a lot of religious institution or organization, when the founder pass away, normally the organization just kind of filter out, like the donations decreases, attendance decreases. And I think due to my the headmaster's just his amazing personality, he was still attracting a lot of followers to Long Beach Monastery. So I think that there was some jealousy, some internal politics going on. So they literally forced the headmaster out.
Wow. So
And,
even Buddhism is not free of
oh yeah, that's what I
yeah,
mean by earlier. That's
the
why, yeah.
irony, yes,
And
the
then they
incongruences.
sent these other monks to take care of us, and it turned bad, really bad. And then so naturally, one by one, all of us left. Right now, none of us are in a monastery anymore. We just love. In fact, I have to, in a way, I have to escape. A lot of us just have to, quote unquote, escape. The reason I use the word escape is due to, again, this cultural Buddhist thing that once you enter the monastery as a Buddhist monk, if you leave, if you return to lay life, your bad karma just increased by 100-folds. So this, again, this guilt trip. Once you return to lay
So
life,
that is what had kind of kept you.
a lot of us, this fear that like once we turn to lay life, we are equal to animals. We're not even human because, well, you name it, like there's religious stupid, again, I think so. That
So no idea of integrating Buddhism into a, quote unquote normal life. It's the idea that you reject these teachings if you engage in a normal.
Yeah.
And are punished eternally, kind of.
Yes.
So there's a threat of, there was a threat in there.
Yes. Yes. So a lot of us just kind of just leave without kind of quote unquote escape without telling the head monk, well, other monks, because I think partially I was afraid of this guilt, like this guilt, this fear, you name it. And it was miserable. So from Long Beach, when the headmaster got pushed out, we will move back to Ukiah, Northern California. And I stayed for 2 extra more years, and those were like pretty miserable years. So
was it like analogous to being a refugee in a way?
Yeah.
Were you taken in, like, because you weren't prepared really for living in the community?
Yes.
And along those lines, I'm also wondering throughout your experience, did you have fantasies through your exposure? Oh, I'd like to be in film. I'd like to be a movie director. Oh, I'd like to be, like an IT guy. Like,
or were you even exposed to those?
We weren't even exposed to that.
Sheltered,
we
probably.
were so sheltered. Yes, we were so sheltered. And one by one, a lot of like us just leave. And finally, I just told myself, I have to leave. So I left. I left literally with, I think, $300, $400 cash in my pocket.
And now you were about college age.
Yeah, I was 19 years old. Yeah. So, and it was leaving that to quote unquote back to the real world. It was traumatic, talking about trauma. So the first biggest trauma I have is when my mom dropped me off when I was 9 years old. My mom dropped me off at the monastery. She stayed with me for 3 days and boom, bye. And then for first 3 to 6 months in a country, and I didn't even know how to speak any English. I only knew literally A, B, C, and D. That's it. So that was probably the biggest trauma that around 19 years old. And then first couple years in the boot, and when I became a monk, 12, 13 years old, I will consider that as a secondary trauma-ish. And then when I left the monastery, again, for 10 years in a very sheltered, I did not know anything going on outside the world. It was very limited exposure and had to reintegrate. I had to relearn everything.
So it still was a new immigrant experience. So it was like your second immigration.
Yes, the biggest fear, of course, is my immigration. Because when I was in the monastery, my immigration status was sponsored by the monastery. Now I'm out.
I see.
Financially, I had no one. I have no relatives, no family in the United States. Nothing. I have no financial means. I cannot work. I have no idea how to work. I had literally like the most basic thing, how to use fork, how to, no, not use, the table manner eating out at a fast food restaurant. Well, at restaurant.
Americanization, acculturation, all of that process.
Nothing. So leaving a monastery, those 2 years were rough, or like I think that I hit rock bottom, like the closest analogy I have heard. Again, I'm not trying to compare myself to the military veterans. I'm not sure. And I have heard similar analogy that a lot of these military veterans, they might be in the military for 20 years with structures, with like with status, you name it, with whatever protection, and suddenly they leave the military back to civil.
Right.
Boom,
Absolutely. It's a
nothing.
civilian to the civilian
Sorry.
world.
Yes.
I'm wondering, I'm noticing the time,
Mhm.
like a good psychologist. And
Oh, I have so many more
I
questions.
have
feel like
so
this would be
many
like
more.
part
And
two.
so what I
Yeah.
am wondering is if we can somehow break this into chapters. And it
Sure.
sounds like this point of your next transition or your next immigration phase, shall we say,
Yes.
might be an opportunity for interview part 2, and if we kind of if you could think of, Crystal, like how we sum up this first chapter, and bring it to the current.
Well, I think JR started off very, very well in
Yeah.
terms of talking about his different identities,
Yeah.
Taiwanese American, Taiwanese, Asian American. And so when I think of this experience, when you're an adolescent, this is when you're starting to try to solidify your identity. So to have, such a sheltered experience and then be thrust into the world of the US, I worry that someone experiences sort of a delay of really integrating their identity and really understanding who they are in different contexts. And so I think when we think of the theme of identity, thinking about a part 2, there's so much we can all relate to, just
So
in
much.
terms of our experience navigating different settings.
Yes.
And I think that's, that really, really strongly correlates with identity, because I think we all have that shared experience of navigating different settings. But I mean, JR, we gotta dig in a little bit more. Wow.
Yeah, we're gonna need a couple more interviews here. In the beginning, when we were talking about how you identify and how fluid that process is, I was thinking about when you said that you may not currently identify as Taiwanese anymore, that you feel much more American, and one thing I've held on to is the thought of how we see ourselves often is not what others may see us as, right? How we identify and how others see us may be very different. And with that, others often carry a lot of assumptions and stereotypes, right? And so no matter how, I can definitely identify with this, no matter how American I identify or feel, I feel like I'll always be seen as an immigrant or a foreigner.
Yes.
That I don't fit that image of what it is to be American, which might be different from someone who's Black, because you can be African American, for example. But I think no matter how long I'm in this country, or some of my East Asian or other South Asian peers or friends, colleagues are in this country, I think we're always seen as foreigners. And so that's one thing that I'm kind of stuck on, not necessarily in a question, but that even though you see yourself as American, others may make these assumptions and still see you as Taiwanese or Asian. But also then the assumptions and stereotypes of even what it is or what it means to be Asian that others might put on you. And hearing more about your story, you don't necessarily fit that immigration experience that many other Asians may have had, or that people assume someone who they see as Asian has had, that you very much have your own unique experience that you carry. So it must be hard sometimes to feel maybe not understood, or that people just can't really get you and what your experience has been, what you've been through.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
I bet during that first interview with your therapist, you blew their hair back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
It wasn't that typical, oh, my parents came and they were in college and then they met, and I grew up in this neighborhood where I wasn't accepted, I mean, things that we often hear.
Yep.
And you have many layers of loss in there.
Oh yeah, many layers, different layers.
Yes, and we still have to sort of, follow that transition to what you do now. I mean, you're basically a
Yes.
therapist, and you have so much experience to impart on
Yeah.
others. And, I can only imagine how many people you've helped with your unique story. So
Yeah, thank you.
And also this chapter, this part of your journey is on your terms. And you are guiding and leading that. And I know you said, to come full circle to where we started, you see yourself not as a leader, but more as someone who inspires others. And I definitely have felt that from you as well. But also I see you as an influencer. And so you may not be leading or may not want to be leading, but I think you, in your inspiring others, you influence others in many
Thank you.
ways.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And you're leading your own journey.
Yes, definitely.
As it ebbs and flows and continues. Yeah, so I look forward to hearing, more about kind of what led you to this place where we've met you currently in doing this
Yes.
work.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you
Awesome.
for letting us in.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for all the questions that you two have asked me. And I'm looking forward to the next interview, and hopefully our listener, our audience also enjoy my stories, and stay tuned for more. So
Stay tuned. I love this connection that we have, and I feel very grateful for both of you.
yes, thank you.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy 2022.
Yes.